The spotlight hit Calum Thorne like a fist to the chest. 1 second, he was balanced on the scaffolding above the Grand Lyric Hall, wiping dust from the crystal chandeliers. The next, 10,000 faces turned upward, their phones already recording. The charity gala had been humming with polite applause and champagne glasses, but now the entire auditorium went silent. The famous TV host, Veda Sterling, stood center stage in a dress that cost more than Calum earned in 5 years. Her microphone raised like a weapon. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice dripping with amusement, "it seems we have an uninvited guest tonight. Before we continue, please like and tell me where you are watching from. I want to know how far my stories have traveled." Calum froze. His cleaning vest hung loose over his shoulders, stained with grease and sweat. The digital counter on the massive screen behind Veda showed the live stream numbers climbing. 3 million viewers, 4 million. The cameramen swiveled their lenses toward him. "Come down here," Veda called, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Don't be shy." Security guards appeared at the base of the scaffolding. Calum's hands tightened around the metal railing. He could see the emergency exit across the hall, but his legs refused to move. The crowd began to murmur, then laugh. Someone shouted, "Get him down here!" Others joined in, clapping in rhythm like he was part of the entertainment. He climbed down the ladder, each step echoing in the vast space. The velvet carpet felt wrong under his work boots. Veda waited at the center of the stage, bathed in golden light, while the orchestra pit held silent behind her. When he reached her, she thrust the microphone toward his face. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she asked. "Calum." His voice came out rough, barely audible. "Speak up, Calum. 7 million people are watching." She gestured to the screen where the counter kept rising. The camera zoomed in on his face, projecting his confusion onto a display the size of a billboard. He could see his own reflection in the polished floor, a ghost among the glittering crowd. "Do you think she planned this moment? Or was it pure cruelty born from boredom?" Veda circled him slowly, her heels clicking like a countdown. "You know, Calum, I'm feeling generous tonight. This is a charity event after all. We're raising money for children with heart conditions." She paused, letting that word hang in the air. Calum's throat closed. His daughter Celine was lying in a hospital bed 15 miles away, waiting for the surgery that would cost everything he didn't have. "So here's what we're going to do. You're going to sing for us." The crowd erupted in laughter, phones held higher, recording every angle. Veda leaned closer, her perfume overwhelming. "Sing the titanium high C from my song Skyward. You know it, don't you? Everyone knows it." Calum's mind went blank. He did know it. He'd performed it once, in another life, on a stage just like this one. The memory crashed over him like a wave, dragging him under. "I can't," he whispered. "You can't?" Veda's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. "Oh, that's disappointing. See, I thought maybe you had some hidden talent. But I guess some people are meant to clean while others are meant to shine." She turned to the audience, spreading her arms wide. "Isn't that right?" The applause was deafening. Calum stood there, trapped in the lights, while millions watched him crumble. Veda leaned in one more time, her microphone switched off. Her lips barely moved. "Fail quietly, peasant. The world needs a joke, and you're it." The camera flashes multiplied. The live stream hit 10 million, and in that moment, standing in the glare of public humiliation, Calum's past rose up to meet him. 5 years ago, Calum Thorne had been someone else entirely. The memory pulled him back to another stage, another spotlight, the finals of Starlight Rising. 40 million people watching live as he stood in a custom tuxedo, preparing to close the show with the final movement of Verdi's Requiem. The audience already on their feet, anticipating the note that would make him a star. The judges leaning forward. Among them, a younger Veda Sterling who'd called him the future of classical crossover, her prediction printed in every entertainment magazine. His voice back then could transition from chest to head register, like water flowing uphill, defying natural limits. The producers had called it liquid silk. Music critics had called it once in a generation. Calum had simply called it his gift, the thing that made sense when nothing else did. 30 seconds until his cue, the conductor raised his baton. Then Calum's phone buzzed in his pocket. Once, twice, 3 times. Elwyn's name on the screen. He'd silenced it, focused on the orchestra, but it kept buzzing, vibrating against his chest like a second heartbeat. The music swelled. His entrance approached. The phone wouldn't stop. He walked off the stage. The green room was empty when he answered. Elwyn's voice came through broken, gasping. "I can't breathe. Something's wrong. The baby. She was 7 months pregnant. Complications they'd thought were under control." The ambulance dispatcher said 14 minutes. Calum ran. He found her collapsed in their apartment bathroom, her lips turning blue. He held her while the EMTs worked, while they loaded her into the ambulance, while the machine screamed in the emergency room. 40 million people were watching an empty stage, waiting for a singer who would never return. The producers called his phone 17 times. Veda herself left a voicemail, her voice sharp with professional disappointment. Elwyn died at 11:47 p.m. The baby, Celine, survived by emergency delivery. 2 pounds, 4 ounces, fighting for every breath in an incubator while Calum sat in the NICU, his tuxedo still on, his career dying in real time on social media. The headlines wrote themselves by morning. The ghost tenor vanishes. Coward or tragedy? Veda went on the morning shows, her makeup perfect, her voice full of measured regret. True artists honor their commitments. We had sponsors, viewers, people who believed in him. Walking away wasn't just unprofessional, it was a betrayal. She never mentioned Elwyn, never asked why, just branded him a quitter and watched the industry follow her lead. Contracts canceled. Agents stopped returning calls. His name became a cautionary tale. Within 6 months, Calum Thorne, the singer, had vanished completely. Calum Thorne, the janitor, was born from the ashes. The memory released him, dumping him back into the present. Veda's voice echoed through the grand lyric hall, finishing her speech to wild applause. Calum blinked, the stage lights too bright, his hands shaking inside his yellow rubber gloves. She'd destroyed him once, now she was doing it again for entertainment. He stumbled off the stage through the side exit, the crowd's laughter following him into the darkness. His shift wasn't over. The very important person lounge still needed cleaning. His daughter still needed a miracle. And somewhere in this building, Veda Sterling was counting money that would never reach the children who needed it. Can a man rebuild himself from nothing when the world has already written his ending? 4 hours before the gala began, Calum pushed his cleaning cart into the very important person lounge on the 3rd floor. The Grand Lyric Hall's most exclusive space smelled like leather and old money. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the main stage below, where workers were still setting up lights and testing microphones. He had 2 hours to make the lounge perfect before the first guests arrived. He worked methodically, polishing the marble tables, vacuuming the imported rugs, arranging fresh orchids in crystal vases. The rich would arrive, drink champagne that cost more than his monthly rent, and never notice the floors beneath their designer shoes were spotless. That was the job. Be invisible. Be thorough. Go home. Music drifted up from the stage, Veda's voice running through sound check. Calum paused, his hand on the vacuum handle. She was warming up with scales, her voice climbing higher. He could hear the strain in her upper register, the slight flattening of pitch when she pushed for the big notes. His trained ear caught every imperfection. Then something changed. The speakers emitted a flawless, shimmering high C, crystal clear, perfect pitch. But Veda's mouth had closed. He could see her through the lounge windows, standing on the distant stage, not singing. The note continued soaring through the auditorium while she adjusted her earpiece and sipped water. Calum moved closer to the window. The sound engineer in the booth was working a laptop, his fingers flying across keys. Every time Veda opened her mouth, the speakers produced notes that didn't match her lip movements. The timing was off by half a second, the tone too polished, too perfect. She was lip-syncing to something that wasn't even her own voice. He glanced at the private sound booth in the corner of the very important person lounge, the engineer's backup station. The door stood slightly open, equipment humming inside. Calum checked the hallway. Empty. He slipped into the booth. The laptop screen glowed with audio files, layers of waveforms stacked like a tower. Veda's speaking voice on one track, but underneath it, buried in the mix, another voice entirely. The file was labeled SV Skyward Master Levusenly. He clicked through more files, years of them, every hit song, every performance, all featuring the same ghost singer. Someone with the initials SV. A sticky note was attached to the monitor. Vocal mirror sync delay equal to 0.5 seconds. Do not let VIP guests see this setup. Calum's hands shook as he opened another folder. Financial documents, the Heartbeat Foundation, tonight's projected donations, $7 million. The distribution chart showed 85% going to something called image consulting and administrative overhead, only 15% to actual medical grants. He clicked deeper. The consulting fees flowed to shell companies, offshore accounts, Veda's personal production studio. She was stealing from dying children while pretending to save them. The trash can beside the desk overflowed with discarded papers. Calum pulled one out, a handwritten ledger showing real numbers, donations in, payments out. Celine's name appeared on a list under rejected applications, insufficient media value. His daughter had applied for aid from the Heartbeat Foundation 6 months ago. Veda's team had rejected her because her story wasn't photogenic enough. The vacuum cleaner was still running in the main lounge, covering the sound of his movements. Calum yanked the USB drive from his keychain and jammed it into the laptop. He copied everything, every audio file, every financial document, every piece of evidence that proved Veda Sterling was a fraud. The progress bar crawled. 60%, 70%. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. He held his breath, watching the door. 80%, 90%. The footsteps passed. The drive blinked complete. He yanked it free and shoved it into his deepest pocket. He turned off the vacuum and finished cleaning as if nothing had happened. But his mind was racing. The gala would start in 2 hours. Thousands would attend. Millions would watch the live stream. They'd open their wallets for Veda's fake charity while she mocked a janitor on stage for entertainment, unless someone stopped her. Calum looked down at the USB drive in his palm, smaller than his thumb, heavy as a bomb. He thought of Celine in her hospital bed, the surgery she needed, the money he didn't have. This evidence could destroy Veda. It could also destroy him, but maybe some truths were worth the cost. What would you do with proof that could destroy someone who destroyed you first? The crowd noise hit like a physical wave when Calum walked back onto the stage. 2 hours had passed since Veda's humiliation. 2 hours of him cleaning bathrooms and weighing his options while the gala filled the Grand Lyric Hall to capacity. Now he stood in the wings, his cleaning vest traded for a borrowed black shirt, the USB drive burning a hole in his pocket. He'd told the stage manager he had something important to show Veda. The manager had laughed until Calum mentioned the words fraud and live stream. Now here he was, walking back into the spotlight he'd fled 5 years ago, while 12 million people watched online. Veda stood center stage in a platinum gown, the orchestra ready behind her. The giant donation screen showed Celine's face among dozens of other children. "These are the hearts we're saving tonight," Veda said, her voice dripping with compassion. "Every dollar brings hope." Calum walked straight to the grand piano and set the USB drive on its polished surface. The movement caught the camera operator's attention. The lens swiveled. Calum's face appeared on the massive screen behind Veda, 50 feet tall. Veda's smile flickered. Recognition. Then confusion. Then something that looked almost like fear. "Well, well," she said into her microphone, recovering quickly. "The janitor returns. Did you practice your high note?" The audience laughed, but it sounded uncertain now. Something felt different. Calum took the second microphone from its stand, his hands steady despite his racing heart. "I'll sing," he said, his voice carrying to the back rows without effort. Years of training made projection instinct. "But first, I have a condition." "Conditions?" Veda's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "You're not exactly in a position to negotiate." No backing track. Calum pointed to the sound booth above them. No auto-tune, no pitch correction, no vocal mirror, just raw voices, yours and mine. The audience went completely silent. Even the orchestra stopped adjusting their instruments. Veda's eyes darted to the USB drive on the piano, then to her sound engineer visible through the booth window. The engineer had gone pale. "That's ridiculous," Veda said. "We always use production tracks for live performances. It's industry standard." "Then prove you can do it without them." Calum took 3 steps closer. Every camera in the building tracked his movement. "You've told the world you can hit the titanium high C and skyward, so do it, right now. No computers, no processing, just you." The murmur in the crowd grew louder. Phones rose. The live stream counter hit 15 million. Veda's publicist rushed from backstage, whispering urgently in her ear. Security guards moved toward the stage but stopped when the audience started shouting. "Let her try," someone yelled. "Prove it. Sing it live." Veda was trapped. If she refused, the questions would never stop. If she tried and failed, her career ended tonight. Her hand tightened around the microphone until her knuckles went white. "Fine." She turned to the sound booth and made a slashing gesture across her throat. "Cut everything. Give me a live mic. No effects." The engineer hesitated, his hand hovering over the controls. Then he complied. The subtle, backing track that had been humming beneath everything went dead. The auditorium filled with pure, raw silence. Veda lifted the microphone to her lips, took a breath, opened her mouth. The note that emerged was thin and wavering, nowhere near the crystal clarity her recordings promised. She tried again, pushing harder. Her voice cracked halfway up the scale and broke into a strained whisper. The audience gasped. 10,000 people watching her fail in real time. Calum picked up the USB drive from the piano and held it high. "That's because it's not your voice. It never was." His words echoed through the stunned silence. "Every song, every performance, every note you claimed as yours, they're all on here, including the name of the real singer, Sloan Vance." The auditorium erupted, not applause, chaos, shouting, accusations. The live stream comments exploded. The counter hit 18 million and kept climbing. Veda lunged for the USB drive, but Calum stepped back. "And the Heartbeat Foundation," he continued, his voice cutting through the noise. "You raised $7 million tonight. You showed my daughter's face on that screen. Celine Thorne. She needs heart surgery. Your foundation rejected her 6 months ago because she wasn't photogenic enough. And tonight, only 15% of the money you're collecting will actually help children. The rest disappears into your offshore accounts." "You're lying!" Veda screamed, but her voice was still wrong, still broken. Everyone could hear the difference now. The lie made audible. Calum walked to the edge of the stage and handed the USB drive to a woman in the front row. She wore a press badge. Her hands shook as she took it. "Upload it," he said. "Share it. Let the world decide who's lying." She pulled out her phone. Within seconds, the files were copying, spreading, going viral in real time. Veda's security team rushed the stage, but the damage was done. The truth was already airborne, replicating faster than they could contain it. Calum turned back to Veda, who stood frozen in the spotlight that had loved her for a decade, and now revealed her completely. "You told the world I was a coward for walking away from my performance 5 years ago, but I walked away to hold my dying wife. You've been running from the truth your entire career, so who's the real coward?" The crowd split. Some booed, some cheered. Most just stared in shock, their phones recording history. And in the silence between the screaming, Calum finally opened his mouth and sang. No backing track, no enhancement. Just his voice, trained and true, hitting the titanium high C that Veda never could. The notes soared through the grand lyric hall, pure and clear and devastating. It hung in the air long after he stopped, a ghost remembering how to haunt. The standing ovation started in the back rows and rolled forward like a wave crashing against the stage. How does it feel when the invisible become impossible to ignore? Calum made it halfway to the parking garage before the lawyers found him. The gala had descended into chaos, security escorting Veda out through a back exit while reporters swarmed, the live stream counter frozen at 20 million viewers. Calum had slipped away in the confusion, his borrowed black shirt soaked with sweat, his hands still shaking from the adrenaline of what he'd just done. He was thinking about Celine, about getting to the hospital, about what came next. He didn't hear the footsteps behind him until a voice cut through the concrete hallway like a knife. "Mr. Thorne, we need to talk." 3 people in suits emerged from the shadows. The lead attorney was a woman in her 40s, her briefcase expensive, her expression cold and professional. She extended a hand he didn't take. Thalassa Thorne, no relation. Her smile was sharp. "I represent Veda Sterling's interests. I have nothing to say to you." "Then just listen." She set the briefcase on the hood of a nearby car and opened it with a click that echoed like a cell door closing. Inside was a contract and a check. $200,000. Immediately transferred to cover your daughter's surgery. Every penny of her medical care. Follow-up treatments. Whatever she needs. Calum stared at the numbers. Enough to save Celine. More than enough. The surgery was scheduled for next week. Pending payment he couldn't make. This money would change everything. "What do you want?" "A public retraction." Thalassa's voice never changed temperature. "Tomorrow morning, you go on camera and explain that you were mistaken. The files you shared were taken out of context. A misunderstanding by someone unfamiliar with industry practices. You apologize to Ms. Sterling for the damage to her reputation and career. And you sign a non-disclosure agreement preventing you from discussing this matter again. Ever." The second lawyer stepped forward, younger, hungrier. "If you refuse, we file lawsuits tonight. Defamation, theft of proprietary materials, industrial espionage, harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress. We'll bury you in litigation. Legal fees alone will bankrupt you within 6 months." The third lawyer pulled out a tablet showing news coverage. The story had exploded across every platform. #cancel Veda trending worldwide. But Veda's team was already fighting back. Press releases about disgruntled former contestants, accusations of doctored evidence, a statement from the head sound engineer, Garrick Vance, claiming the files were fabricated. "The internet has a short memory," Thalassa said. "By next week this will be a debate, not a fact." He said, she said, without your testimony, without your credibility, the story dies. We make sure of that. And if I take the money, you save your daughter. You move on with your life. You never clean another toilet. She pushed the contract closer. Miss Sterling is willing to be generous. She understands you are acting out of desperation, a father trying to help his sick child. There's no shame in that. Calum looked at the check, at Celine's surgery, printed in numbers on paper. All he had to do was lie. Pretend the truth wasn't true. Let Veda keep stealing from dying children while he saved his own. I need to think. You have until noon tomorrow. Thalassa closed the briefcase. After that, the offer expires and the lawsuits begin. 24 hours, Mr. Thorne. Choose wisely. Some battles aren't worth fighting when your daughter's life is the cost. They left him standing in the parking garage, the contract in his hands. The concrete walls pressed in. Somewhere above him, the city was talking about what he'd done, debating, questioning, already starting to doubt. His phone buzzed with messages, reporters, supporters, people calling him a hero, others calling him a liar. He ignored them all and drove to the hospital. Celine was awake when he entered her room, watching the news on the small television mounted to the wall. Her eyes found his face immediately, reading him the way only children can read their parents. They're saying mean things about you. I know. Calum sat in the chair beside her bed, the same chair he'd occupied every night for months. Did you really steal those files? I copied evidence of someone doing wrong. Does that make me a thief? Celine considered this with impossible seriousness. At school, Mrs. Patterson says telling the truth is always right, even when it's hard. Adults make things more complicated than that. Because they're scared? The question hit him in the chest. Calum looked at his daughter, small and sick and wiser than anyone her age should have to be. The heart monitor beeped its steady rhythm, the only sound that mattered. Yeah, he admitted. Because we're scared. Are you scared now? He thought about the lawyers, the contract, the money that could save her life sitting in an envelope in his pocket. Terrified. Celine reached for his hand. Her fingers were thin and cold, the 4-line taped to her wrist. I heard the nurses talking about the surgery, about how much it costs. You don't need to worry about that. I'm 8, Dad, not stupid. She squeezed his hand with what little strength she had. But I want to tell you something. I'd rather have a brave dad than a rich one. Mom used to say you were the bravest person she knew, because you stayed true even when it hurt. Something cracked open in Calum's chest. Not breaking. Opening. He pulled out his phone and set it on the windowsill, opening the camera app. His hands were steady now. Clear. What are you doing? Celine asked. Something your mom would understand. He hit record. The red light blinked on. 20 million people had watched him expose Veda tonight. By morning, this video would reach even more. He looked directly into the lens, into the eyes of everyone who would watch, everyone who would judge. My name is Calum Thorne. 2 hours ago, Veda Sterling's legal team offered me $200,000 to say I lied about her using ghost singers and stealing charity money. They gave me until tomorrow at noon. So here's my answer. He pulled the contract from his pocket and held it up to the camera. Then he tore it in half. The sound was loud in the quiet room. He tore it again and again. The pieces fell like confetti, like snow, like the ashes of bridges burning. The truth isn't for sale. Not for 200,000, not for 2 million, not for any amount. My daughter is watching this right now, and I want her to grow up knowing that her father chose right over easy, even if it costs us everything. He stopped recording. His finger hovered over the upload button. This was the point of no return. Once this went live, the lawsuits would come, the legal battles, the destruction of whatever life he'd managed to build from the ruins. Celine was crying, not sad tears, something else. Pride, maybe. Hope, Mom would be so proud of you, she whispered. Calum pressed upload, watched the view counter start to climb. 100, 1,000, 10,000. The comments poured in faster than he could read them. Support, anger, threats, love. His phone started ringing immediately. Unknown numbers, reporters, lawyers. He turned it off and sat in the dark with his daughter, listening to the machines keep her alive while the world outside caught fire. The battle had just begun. But for the first time in 5 years, Calum Thorne wasn't running from it. Would you sacrifice everything for a truth that could cost you the one person you love most? The video had already hit 50,000 views by the time Calum sat down beside Celine's hospital bed. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from strangers, reporters demanding interviews, lawyers calling on behalf of Veda's team. He silenced it all and focused on his daughter, who was sitting up against her pillows, her tablet glowing in the dim room. She looked pale, thinner than last week, but her eyes were alert. "Daddy, you need to see this," she said, turning the screen toward him. It was the video from the gala. Someone had edited it down to 2 minutes, the moment he challenged Veda, her voice cracking. His revelation about the stolen charity money, the standing ovation. The clip had gone viral, spreading across every platform. The comments section scrolled past too fast to read. "Everyone's talking about you," Celine whispered. "They're calling you brave." Calum touched her hand, careful of the 4-line. "How are you feeling?" "My heart didn't hurt when I watched this. For the first time in forever, it didn't hurt." Her voice cracked. "I was proud instead of scared." The contract in his pocket felt like it was burning through the fabric. $200,000. Celine's surgery. A new life. All he had to do was destroy the thing that had made her proud. Take back the truth. Become a liar to save her body while killing something more important. "They offered me money," he said quietly. "A lot of money. Enough for your surgery and more." Celine's face didn't change. She just watched him with those 2 old eyes. "What did they want you to do?" "Say I was wrong, that I made it all up." "But you didn't make it up." "No." She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the edge of her blanket. The heart monitor beeped its steady rhythm. Outside in the hallway, nurses walked past pushing medication carts. Normal hospital sounds. Normal night. Except nothing about this was normal anymore. "Mom used to tell me stories about you," Celine said, "about how you walked away from everything to be with her. She said you were the kind of person who chose love over glory, truth over comfort." She looked up at him. "I don't want you to change that now. Not for me. Celine, without that money, I know what it means." Her voice was small but steady. "But if you take it, if you lie, then what was it all for? You stood up there in front of the whole world. You showed everyone that the truth matters more than being comfortable. If you take it back now, what does that teach me?" Calum felt something break open inside his chest. Not pain. Something bigger. He pulled out his phone and opened the camera app again, set it to live stream this time. His hands were shaking, but his mind was clear. "What are you doing?" Celine asked. "Something your mother would understand." He propped the phone on the windowsill, facing both of them. Hit the live button. The viewer count started at 0 and began climbing immediately. 10, 50, 200. People were finding the stream, sharing it, watching in real time. Calum looked into the camera. "My name is Calum Thorne. Some of you saw what happened at the Grand Lyric Hall tonight. What you didn't see was what happened after." He pulled the contract from his pocket, held it up so the camera could see the letterhead, the numbers, the signature lines. "Veda Sterling's lawyers offered me $200,000. They want me to say I lied, to take back everything I revealed about her fraud." The viewer count hit 5,000, 10,000. The comment section exploded. "My daughter needs heart surgery. She needs it soon. That money would save her life." He glanced at Celine, who was watching him with tears in her eyes. But here's what I learned tonight. You can't save someone by becoming the thing that destroys you. You can't teach your child that truth matters and then sell it for any price. He tore the contract in half. The sound was loud in the quiet room, sharp as a gunshot. He tore it again and again. The pieces fell onto the hospital bed, white paper scattered across blue blankets like snow. So here's my answer. No, the truth isn't for sale. Not today. Not ever. The viewer count hit 50,000. The comments were moving too fast to read. Support, anger, donations, threats, love, hate, everything human pouring through the screen at once. Celine reached for his hand, squeezed it. I love you, Daddy. Calum ended the stream and pulled her into a hug, careful of all the wires and tubes keeping her alive. She felt so small in his arms, so fragile, but also stronger than he'd ever been. His phone started ringing again immediately. He ignored it. Let the lawyers call. Let Veda's team mobilize. Let the lawsuits come. He'd made his choice. Whatever happened next, he'd face it, knowing he'd stayed true. The heart monitor beeped. The machines hummed. And somewhere out in the digital world, 50,000 people had just watched a man choose his daughter's respect over her survival. Mourning would bring consequences. But tonight, in this moment, Calum Thorne was finally free. What would you give up to remain the person your child believes you to be? The lawsuit arrived at 6 in the morning, delivered by a courier who made Calum sign for his own destruction. $10 million in damages, defamation, theft of proprietary information, industrial espionage, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The complaint was 47 pages long, single-spaced, dense with legal language designed to terrify. Attached to it was a press release already circulating online. Veda's team had worked through the night. The statement painted Calum as a disturbed ex-contestant with a history of instability. They'd leaked photos of his apartment, the cramped studio, dishes in the sink, Celine's medical equipment crowding the living room. The caption read, "Is this the environment of a fit parent?" The implication was clear. Calum wasn't a hero. He was a desperate man making reckless accusations to pay his bills. By noon, the narrative had shifted. News outlets were running both sides' stories, experts debating whether Calum's evidence could be trusted. Think pieces about the ethics of secretly recording workplace conversations. The Internet's attention span was already fracturing, moving on to the next outrage. Calum sat in a free legal clinic, across from a tired public defender who was shaking his head at the lawsuit. They're going to bury you in discovery. Depositions, motions. This will take years, cost hundreds of thousands you don't have. So, I just give up. I'm saying you should consider their settlement offer seriously. If they make another one. But Veda wasn't offering settlements anymore. She was going for total destruction. Her team leaked more photos. Calum at the hospital, looking exhausted. Calum at the grocery store, buying generic brands. Everything designed to paint him as pathetic, unstable, untrustworthy. The counter-narrative was working. Public opinion was shifting. Doubt was creeping in. Then, 3 days after the lawsuit dropped, something changed. A new video appeared online. No fancy production. Just a woman sitting in a recording studio, looking directly into the camera. She was in her 30s, dark hair pulled back, wearing a simple black shirt. Her voice was quiet, but steady. My name is Sloane Vance. For the past 10 years, I've been the voice you hear on Veda Sterling's albums. The internet stopped moving. Sloane pulled up audio files on her laptop, playing them side by side. Her voice. Veda's voice. Identical. I signed a non-disclosure agreement when I was 23. I needed the money. The contract said I'd be credited as a session vocalist, but that never happened. Instead, Veda's team paid me per track and made me sign away any claim to royalties or recognition. She played raw studio stems, unedited vocals, her voice hitting notes Veda had claimed as her own on stage, on albums and interviews, years of evidence, timestamps, metadata. Everything Calum's USB drive had contained, now verified by the person who'd actually sung the songs. I stayed silent because I was afraid, because I needed the work, because they told me no one would believe a nobody over a star. Sloane's eyes were red, but her voice never wavered. But Calum Thorne risked everything to tell the truth. He's fighting a legal battle that could destroy him. And I can't stay quiet anymore, not when someone is being punished for exposing what I was too afraid to admit. She uploaded the files, everything. Studio recordings, contracts, emails from Veda's team explicitly instructing her to never reveal her role. Payment records showing she'd been paid flat fees while Veda earned millions in royalties. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. Within an hour, 3 major sponsors dropped Veda. Her concert tour was canceled. The hashtag Give the Janitor the Mic hit #1 worldwide, pushing past celebrity gossip and political scandals. News outlets that had been running both sides' stories pivoted hard. This wasn't a debate anymore. This was documented fraud. Veda's social media accounts went dark. Her publicist released a statement calling Sloane a liar, but no one was listening. The evidence was too overwhelming, too specific, too real. Calum watched it unfold from his apartment, his phone blowing up with messages from supporters. Strangers offering to help with legal fees, musicians reaching out, journalists requesting exclusive interviews. The public defender called back, his tone completely different. I think we might actually win this. But winning meant surviving long enough to get to court. Veda's legal team wasn't backing down. If anything, they were getting more aggressive, filing motion after motion to delay and exhaust. They had unlimited resources. Calum was still a janitor living paycheck to paycheck. The hospital called. Celine's surgery had been scheduled for 2 weeks from now, pending payment. The fundraiser from his viral video had brought in $18,000. Helpful, but not enough. Not even close. He was sitting at his kitchen table calculating impossible math when his phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had started a new crowdfunding campaign. The Father Who Wouldn't Lie, medical fund for Celine Thorne. The description was simple. Calum Thorne chose truth over money. Let's make sure his daughter gets the care she needs anyway. The goal was $85,000. Within 6 hours, it had raised $200,000. By midnight, $500,000. Artists were sharing it. Celebrities were matching donations. Normal people were giving $20, $50, whatever they could spare. The comments section was full of people telling their own stories. Parents who'd been lied to by charities, workers who'd been silenced by powerful bosses. Anyone who'd ever been told their truth didn't matter. Calum read them until his vision blurred. Then he called the hospital and told them to schedule the surgery. The money was coming. His daughter would live. And Veda Sterling's empire was crumbling faster than her lawyers could build defenses. Can the truth survive in a world built on beautiful lies? The courtroom was packed beyond capacity when Judge Myra Vance called the preliminary hearing to order. Every seat filled. Reporters standing against the back wall. Cameras banned, but sketch artists working furiously. The judge was in her 60s, gray hair pulled back tight, reading glasses perched on her nose. She'd been on the bench for 30 years and had a reputation for tolerating exactly zero nonsense. Veda sat at the plaintiff's table in a conservative navy suit, her hair styled simply, makeup minimal, playing the victim. Her legal team surrounded her like armor. 8 lawyers, all from the most expensive firm in the state. Thalassa Thorne led them, standing to present the opening argument. Your Honor, this is a clear case of defamation and theft. Mr. Calum Thorne, a disgruntled former reality show contestant, broke into private computer systems, stole confidential files, and used them to destroy my client's reputation and livelihood. The financial damages alone exceed— Miss Thorne, the judge's voice cut like a blade. I've read your 47-page complaint. Please skip to the part where you explain why Miss Sterling can't produce evidence of actually singing the song she's credited for. Thalassa hesitated. Your Honor, that's not the issue at hand. The issue is the illegal acquisition of— I'll decide what the issue is. Judge Vance turned to Calum's table. The public defender stood, looking nervous but determined. Does your client have the alleged recordings? Yes, Your Honor. We've submitted them as evidence. We also have testimony from Sloan Vance, the actual vocalist, who has provided studio documentation. Objection. Thalassa was on her feet. Ms. Vance is a paid performer who signed contracts explicitly stating contracts that allegedly prevented her from receiving proper credit. Judge Vance removed her glasses. Here's what's going to happen. I'm clearing this courtroom of all electronic devices except the official court recorder. Bailiff, collect every phone, every camera, every recording device. Anyone who refuses leaves immediately. The courtroom erupted in protests. The judge's gavel came down like thunder. This is not a performance. This is a court of law. Comply or leave. It took 20 minutes to clear the room of devices. When it was done, only the judge, the lawyers, Calum, Veda, and the court officers remained in the silent space. Judge Vance stood and walked down from the bench, her robes rustling in the quiet. Ms. Sterling approached the bench. Veda stood, her face carefully neutral. She walked forward until she was standing directly in front of the judge. The courtroom held its breath. The fundamental question in this case is simple, Judge Vance said. Did you sing the vocals on your albums or didn't you? If you did, proving it should be easy. If you didn't, then Mr. Thorne's accusations are truthful, regardless of how he obtained the evidence. She gestured to the empty courtroom. No cameras, no audience, no pressure. Just you, me, and the truth. Sing the note. Veda's lawyer started to object, but the judge held up a hand. Miss Sterling, you've built a career claiming you can hit a C6, the so-called titanium high C, every album, every concert, every interview. You've claimed this ability as your signature, so prove it right now. In the silence of this room, the quiet was absolute. Calum could hear his own heartbeat. Veda stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Her lawyer whispered urgently in her ear, but the judge cut him off. No coaching, no discussion, just the note, Miss Sterling, one note. That's all I'm asking. Veda took a breath, opened her mouth. A thin, wavering sound emerged. Nowhere close to the note. She tried again. Her voice cracked halfway up and broke into silence. Tried a third time. The sound that came out was painful, strained, obviously wrong. Judge Vance returned to the bench. The silence stretched for a full minute before she spoke. I've sat on this bench for 3 decades. I've seen every kind of lie humans can tell, but this is perhaps the most elaborate fraud I've witnessed. She looked directly at Veda. You built an empire on someone else's voice. You accepted awards, accolades, and millions of dollars for work you didn't do. And when someone revealed the truth, you tried to destroy them financially and legally. She turned to the lawyers. The lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm ordering Ms. Sterling to pay Mr. Thorne's legal fees and $50,000 in damages for malicious prosecution. This court will also be referring this matter to the appropriate authorities for investigation into the charity fraud allegations. Thalassa shot to her feet. Your Honor, you can't possibly— I can, and I have. Are you suggesting I didn't just witness what I witnessed? That I didn't hear what I heard? The judge's voice was ice. Your client just failed to produce the single piece of evidence that would have vindicated her. Instead, she proved Mr. Thorne's accusations were accurate. This hearing is concluded. The gavel came down. The sound echoed through the empty courtroom like a bell. Ada stood frozen at her table, her face pale. Thalassa was already on her phone, probably calling senior partners. The public defender was grinning so wide it looked painful. And Calum just sat there, letting the reality sink in. He'd won. Against impossible odds, against unlimited resources, against a system designed to crush people like him. He'd won. The bailiff opened the doors. The reporters and spectators flooded back in, demanding to know what happened. The sketch artists were already drawing. Within minutes, the news would spread. Within hours, it would be everywhere. Calum walked out of the courthouse into a crowd of cameras and questions. He didn't stop, just kept walking until he reached his car, sat in the driver's seat, and finally, for the first time in a week, let himself breathe. His phone buzzed. A message from the hospital. Celine's surgery was confirmed for tomorrow morning. The crowdfunding campaign had raised $1.2 million, more than enough, more than he'd ever imagined possible. He started the car and drove toward the hospital, leaving the courthouse and the cameras and Veda Sterling's collapsing empire behind him. When does justice finally sound like the truth? The surgery took 8 hours. Calum sat in the waiting room surrounded by people he'd never expected to see. Marcus, the night shift janitor from the Grand Lyric Hall, had shown up with coffee at 6 in the morning. Rosa, the head nurse from Celine's floor, came during her break. 3 other cleaning staff from various venues around the city, people who understood what it meant to be invisible, who'd watched him become visible and wanted to be there when it mattered most. No celebrities, no cameras, just working people sitting in uncomfortable chairs, drinking bad coffee, waiting for news about a little girl most of them had never met. The fundraiser had exceeded every projection, $1.2 million. After Celine's surgery and follow-up care, there would be enough to start a foundation, help other families trapped in the same impossible situation. Calum had spent the night before making lists, planning, trying to turn this moment into something that would last beyond the headlines. But right now, all that mattered was the red light above the operating room door. Still on, still surgery in progress. Hour 5 became hour 6. Marcus fell asleep in his chair, snoring softly. Rosa paced the hallway, her rosary beads clicking. Calum just stared at the light, his hands clasped between his knees, praying to a God he wasn't sure he believed in anymore. Finally, at 4:17 in the afternoon, the light went dark. The surgeon emerged 10 minutes later, still in scrubs, pulling off his surgical cap. His face was tired but smiling. Mr. Thorne? Calum stood so fast he nearly fell. How is she? The surgery was successful. We repaired the ventricular septal defect completely. No complications. Her heart is strong. The doctor's smile widened. Your daughter is going to be fine. The waiting room erupted. Marcus jumped up, whooping. Rosa started crying. The other janitors clapped and hugged each other. Calum just stood there, the words washing over him. Fine. Going to be fine. After 5 years of fear, of impossible math, of watching his daughter struggle for every breath. Fine. Can I see her? She's in recovery. Give us about an hour, then you can sit with her. The hour felt longer than the previous 8. Calum paced, drank water, tried to eat a sandwich someone handed him, couldn't taste it, just chewed and swallowed mechanically. His mind already in that recovery room, already holding his daughter's hand. When they finally let him in, Celine was asleep, her chest rising and falling with an ease he'd never seen before. No struggling, no monitors screaming warnings, just peaceful, natural breathing. A nurse checked her vitals, smiled at Calum, and quietly left them alone. He sat in the chair beside the bed and took her hand. It felt warmer than usual, stronger. He sat there as the sun set outside the windows, as the hospital shifted into night mode, as nurses came and went on their rounds. Around midnight, Celine's eyes opened, focused on his face. "Dad? I'm here, baby. Did they fix it?" "They fixed it. Your heart is perfect now." She smiled, already drifting back to sleep. "Sing something." Calum hadn't sung since the courthouse, hadn't really sung, properly sung, in 5 years. But sitting there in the dim recovery room, with his daughter alive and healing, the music came back. He opened his mouth and let it out. A lullaby. Simple and pure. The one Eloin used to sing when Celine was a baby. His voice was quiet but clear, filling the small room with sound that didn't need amplification or processing or anything except breath and truth. The nurse at the station outside stopped her paperwork. Another nurse poked her head in, listening. A doctor passing in the hallway paused. The music spread through the recovery wing like light through water, reaching people who needed something beautiful after a day of difficult medicine. When Calum finished, Celine was asleep again, her breathing steady and strong. The nurse who'd been standing in the doorway had tears on her face. "That was beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you." "No," she said. "Thank you." Calum sat with his daughter through the night, watching her chest rise and fall, counting each breath like a gift. Outside, the world was still talking about Veda Sterling's fall, about viral videos and legal battles and justice served. But in this room, none of that mattered. His daughter was alive, his voice had come back, and tomorrow they would start building something new from the ashes of everything that had burned. What does winning actually sound like when the cameras finally turn off? 2 years later, Calum Thorne stood backstage at the Grand Lyric Hall, but the yellow rubber gloves were gone. The dressing room was the same one Veda Sterling had used, someone's idea of poetic justice, making it his tonight. He could see himself in the mirror, wearing a simple black suit, his hair cut professionally for the first time in years. The man looking back was familiar but different, older, steadier, free. A knock on the door. The stage manager poked his head in. 5 minutes, Mr. Thorne. The crowd is incredible. I've never seen anything like it." Calum nodded, his stomach tight with nerves. "Thanks." He walked to the wings and looked out at the auditorium. Every seat filled, standing room packed. The same space where Veda had humiliated him, where he'd exposed her, where everything had changed. But tonight felt different. Quieter, more real. The lights dimmed. The crowd noise swelled and then fell to silence. Calum walked onto the stage. The ovation started immediately, a wave of sound that crashed over him and didn't stop. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3, people on their feet, clapping until their hands must have hurt. He stood there, letting it wash over him, remembering the janitor who'd climbed down from the scaffolding in shame. That man felt like someone from another lifetime. Finally, the crowd settled. Calum approached the microphone at center stage. "Thank you," he said simply. 2 years ago, I stood on this stage and told the truth. Tonight, I'm here to sing it." The front row was reserved for special guests. Celine sat in the center seat wearing a shirt that said "My Dad's Truth" in bold letters. She looked healthy, strong. Her cheeks had color. Her eyes were bright. Next to her sat Marcus and Rosa and the other janitors who'd waited through her surgery. Behind them, the families who'd been helped by the Foundation Calum had started with the fundraiser money. But the person who mattered most was standing in the wings opposite him, Sloane Vance, wearing a simple blue dress, holding a microphone of her own. She caught his eye and nodded. "Ready." The orchestra began, not a recorded track. Live musicians playing the arrangement Calum and Sloane had written together. A new song. Not Skyward, not anything from Veda's catalog. Something original, something true. Calum sang the first verse alone. His voice filled the auditorium naturally, no processing needed. The training from 15 years ago was still there, muscle memory of proper breath support and resonance. But now it carried something extra: experience, pain, survival. Sloane joined him for the chorus. Their voices blended in a way technology could never replicate. Two people who'd been silenced finding their sound together. The harmony was imperfect and human and completely real. The song built toward the bridge, the moment they'd rehearsed dozens of times, the note that had started everything. Calum and Sloane hit it together. The titanium high C. Not impossible, not magical. Just two trained voices doing what they'd spent years learning to do. The audience erupted mid-song, unable to contain themselves. The orchestra kept playing. Calum and Sloane kept singing. They finished together, the final note hanging in the air until it faded into silence. The standing ovation was longer than the first one. Calum looked out at the crowd, at his daughter in the front row crying happy tears, at the people who'd supported him when supporting him had cost something. He stepped to the edge of the stage. The camera in the back of the room had a red light on. This was being streamed, broadcast, recorded for people who couldn't be here in person. He looked directly into the lens. 2 years ago, I learned something important. Your status doesn't define your voice. Your title doesn't determine your worth. Janitor or CEO, famous or invisible, what matters is whether you tell the truth when it costs you everything. He paused. The Thorne Law passed last year. Now every concert ticket has to list who actually performed the vocals. Every album has to credit every voice. It's a small change, but it's a start. He gestured to Sloane, who joined him at the front of the stage. This is Sloane Vance. She's been singing professionally for 15 years. You've heard her voice on a dozen platinum albums, and now, finally, you know her name. The applause was deafening. Sloane waved, her eyes wet with tears. They stood there together, two people who'd found their voices by refusing to let anyone else silence them. Calum sang one more song to close the show, a lullaby, the one he'd sung to Celine in the hospital, simple and pure and completely his own. When he finished, the crowd stayed on their feet, clapping until the lights came up. Backstage, Celine ran to him, healthy and whole and laughing. He picked her up and spun her around. This daughter who'd saved his life by asking him to be brave. "You were amazing," she said. "We both were." The dressing room filled with people, musicians wanting to collaborate, families from the foundation sharing stories, Marcus and the other janitors, proud to know someone who'd made it but never forgot where he came from. Calum stood in the center of it all, answering questions, shaking hands, hugging people who'd helped him survive. But his mind was already on tomorrow. The next family to help, the next truth to tell, the next song to sing. Because that's what voices were for, not to be pretty or perfect or profitable, but to speak truth when silence was easier, to sing when the world wanted you quiet, to remind people that being invisible didn't mean you had nothing to say. The janitor who'd exposed a fraud had become the singer who'd changed an industry, but more importantly, he'd stayed the father who'd taught his daughter that some things matter more than comfort. And in the end, that was the only voice that really mattered. What truth are you willing to sing when the whole world is finally listening? If this story moved you, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story that could change how you see the world. Share your thoughts in the comments below and inspire others with your own journey from silence to voice. Because your story matters too, and someone out there needs